It's -2 degrees. This is going to be a short video. Welcome to the Bookish A-Z Hot or Not tag, created by another bibliophile reads. There are a list of questions from A to Z. I vote hot or not. And you get to judge watching indoors on your cozy couches. A. A is for audiobooks.
Hot or not, you need to find one that you love both the voice and the book, and that's quite surprisingly difficult. For non-fiction, it's even worse because there are people who read who aren't the author, and they read in a very measured way because they want to read at a regular rate, and it's like listening to almost to a machine reading and lacks excitement. Somebody reading the story to you is much slower than my reading speed. I think that's quite a usual experience, and I want to speed them up so that I can maybe read the book at the same time if I want to read the book. But then their voice starts to speak very fast and it loses expressiveness. So I am still open to the possibility of finding a fabulous audiobook, but I have bought and listened to about 7 and they weren't great experiences. So I think I like reading out loud myself too much. And maybe sometime I should try reading a book out loud and then putting the recording away, coming back to it in 5 or 10 years' time and seeing if it's good. That might be fun.
B is for Bildungsroman, a person's formative years or spiritual education. Not particularly interested in very young people coming through and growing up, not a particular period of time. Interested in insights from older people. C is for children's books, which are wonderful because of their pictures in combination with text. I wish adult books were like that, but I'm not particularly reading them myself now, but they're fantastic. D is for digital. I prefer the real books, to have them in your hand and hold them, hot or not. Not. E is for experimental. Hot, because lots of books that we now read as classical were experimental. For example, Mrs. Dalloway, Virginia Woolf. It's just a matter of time as to when you read them, whether you're reading them when they're new and experimental and strange and you have to bend your mind around understanding them, or it's a little bit later on and you can just read them as they are. F is for fantasy. Not. It's a lot of work to get into a fantasy world, a lot of reading. I tried The Hobbit and found it too much hard work. I shall now blow my nose, induced by the cold. See how I suffer for you. G is for graphic novel. I love the way they link images and words. For me, they are not hot because I don't really read them, to be honest, but I love the concept. H is for horror. Not. News nowadays is where you can get plenty of horror for me. I is for inspirational. Hot when they are not setting out to be inspirational. Some that are intending to be inspirational can be very preachy, but ones that are a mixture of inspirational maybe and something else can be excellent. J is for journalism. Hot if it's someone who can also do long for someone who could also do long form as well. But journalists are normally trained to write very short pieces, so it can be quite tricky to keep it going over a book. K is for kitsch, not hot, very, very cold, freezing, absolutely freezing for me. I like newer things rather than old things gone over and over again. L is for library. Libraries are boiling hot. You're standing on an erupting volcano as far as I'm aware, and if you've watched any of my videos, you will notice the theme of libraries. You will definitely notice the theme of libraries. M for mystery. Not hot for me, but I do like occasionally to pick up an Agatha Christie. I read her quite a bit until I discovered that I could now predict who was going to be the murderer, and it was usually the person who was the quietest and maybe didn't have a reason. And then I find a lot of her books became, the mystery was solved because there was information that was not given to you, I felt sometimes as well. So mystery, not really for me. And non-fiction, boiling hot. Truth is stranger than fiction quite often. Love non-fiction. Thank you to everyone who does non-fiction videos or does a tag even about non-fiction, or even reads a book for non-fiction November. I love that. And especially books about art and the arts in general. O is for omnibus. Not so hot, because then you have the size of a very large book to cope with. If it's an omnibus of short stories, possibly. But if you have several books in one, not so keen. But I do envy the one that is all of Jane Austen, because it's possible to have all her books together and read them. And I've also seen a complete Shakespeare, which looks quite good, just to take from the start of the writing right the way through. But generally, omnibus, not hot. Poetry is hot when it's an anthology, and you get a whole variety of voices and styles, and you find new people. I think it's really hard for one person, and I speak as a poet myself, to sustain interest over a book. And I think especially when you're getting into poetry, one of the hardest things to do is to find the voices that speak to you. And therefore an anthology is a brilliant way to find voices that you like. So poetry in anthologies is a hot. Individual poets that I like, obviously hot as well, but not necessarily all poetry. Q is for quests. Well, all of us as readers are on quests to find the perfect book, the engaging one, the one that makes us stop on our tracks. So it would be, applies to all books, but generally, I'm going to say cold, where a book says that is its main aim, because every book should have a quest. It should have the hero's quest in it as a given, and that is what the story arc is. So it doesn't have to be spelled out for us as a quest as well. I think that's something that's particularly liked by fantasy writers and readers, and that, as I've already said, isn't really my bag. Cool. R is for romance. Not hot for me, although I do think Georgette Hare is fantastic. S is for science fiction. I didn't really understand, it's a not hot for me. I didn't really understand it until someone explained that science fiction is often a way to talk about the problems of the current society and to project them into a completely different setting and then discuss them. So I think that's interesting as a concept, but I don't set out generally to read that genre widely. T is for translation. Every book, hot, every book is an act of translation. It's translating from the author, from what they're seeing of the world onto the page. You read it, and in your mind you translate it, and that is part of the charm of books, whereas a film or some other visual element will give you far more and leave less to your imagination. And also, books that are in translation are the best way to get a wide reading across the world if English is your main language. I've read some books that weren't translated because I did French and Spanish at school, and I wasn't particularly keen on the book itself, and then I was reading it in another language. I think having works in translation is our best chance at reading around the world, having a view that's bigger than the place we find ourselves in. So definitely translation is hot. U is for Übermensch. People who are superhuman can do everything perfectly. Hello, who wants to have those around them? I can understand people who like the movies like Marvel and different things possibly liking these. For me, it's a definite cold. V for Victorian. Hot. Lots of great literature has come from there, and if something is still in print and is in Penguin hundreds of years later, it's good. There's something in it, and it's a story. The telling may be quite dated. For example, I find the detail is quite different in Victorian novels, especially. I struggle with Thomas Hardy, but I think that's because he's truly in love with the landscape. But I don't want to know about every single leaf on a hedge. But overall, Victorian, hot. W is for Western. Doesn't do anything for me in terms of the cowboy stories, maybe because I didn't grow up in America. But Western, as in Western literature, yes, hot. It's mostly literature I've grown up with. It's what I was given to read at school, and it's the one I know. But obviously, the literature and translation helps to widen what I read and understand. X is for X-rated. That would be cold for me. Although the Bible has been known to have very spicy passages, and it's one of the most popular books, most copies around, most read. And if you don't believe me, try reading Song of Solomon. That's all I'm going to say. Y is for young adult, not for me. I'm slightly past the age of being a young adult. Z is for zeitgeist. Every book captures the spirit of its own age. Even if you're writing about the past, you are looking at it through the lens of today. So almost every book is a zeitgeist. The one exception is where there's censorship or things are taken out. And then even that is a zeitgeist. It captures the spirit of that age, which is maybe suspicious or anxious and controlling. So that ends my A to Z. I hope you've enjoyed them. Hope you're feeling warm. I'm going to go indoors and get some coffee and edit this in warmth. Bye for now. I'm not going to tag anyone to do this because I think virtually everybody has already done so. But if you haven't, please give it a go. It's quite a quick one to do.